Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chuck Furuya Uncorked. This week's episode is featuring, what's your name again?
Justin Park. I'm Justin.
From Bar Leather Apron, one of the world's, the country's, the world's finest mixologist extraordinaire, winner of many awards. And of course, his spot is called Bar Leather Apron, downtown Honolulu. And, one of the top
icons.
Yeah, one of the top, what would you call it? Speakeasy? Would you say speakeasy?
Cocktail lounge.
Cocktail lounges in the country, for that matter. I mean, he's been nominated for James Beard a couple times at least. And, we're honored to have him. We think that he has a very unique perspective and some interesting insights into the world, not only of wine perhaps, but of beverages in general, and
service,
and a very worldly approach if you really think about it, and specifically service and hospitality. So I think this is going to be a very interesting episode.
Yeah, super honored to be here. Thank you.
So, Kelly, you start off.
Well, I think the one of the more important things is to kind of nail down the backstory of everyone's relationships here. So you've known my dad or more so Cheryl, my dad's wife, for a really long time, and Jason and Melissa, and now you got to know him a lot.
Cheryl's kids, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I've known this house for a very long time too. Before Cheryl and Chuck and Jason and anyone lived here, they just lived up the street, and I was telling Chuck earlier, ride by every day on our skateboards, and there would be an old man sitting in the window and would wave. And then
it wasn't me, was it?
No, it wasn't you.
Oh, okay.
I said old man. But so then eventually Cheryl moved here, and this was our hangout, like after school, well, sometimes during school, weekend. Yeah, like literally the couch behind me, it's not the same couch, but that would be our spot for like 8 hours straight.
Playing video games?
Yeah, playing video games. Actually, we made our first zine here. Zine is like what the cool kids used to call it, like a
small book.
Like a magazine, like a I don't know, like a diary, I guess you would. It was called Mungan. Jason will remember that. And the whole reason I think we started to do it was for our love for music and skateboarding and whatever, and hopefully getting free stuff from record companies. But yeah, that was. This is where
Kelly, what did Cheryl say about Justin? What story did she share with you?
Well, it was actually about this house too. Is when she first bought it, she had hired you and Jason and Ty to come and help her clean up the backyard.
Yeah.
And she was gonna pay you guys, I guess. And Jason and Ty took like 10 or 15 breaks throughout the day, and you never stopped working. So she sat them all down and said that she was going to give you more. And they're like, we totally understand. And he deserves it. And she just was mentioning that because she was so proud of where you are and how far you've come. And it's all like, that was the day that she noticed that you had that work ethic and that drive,
Cheryl's always been like a second mom to me almost. I lived down the street, like literally hung out here since I was 8 years old with their family. And Cheryl's always so cool and collective, I guess. My mom's the same way, but Cheryl just was like different. She was just like, you could like, Jason would like say like, oh, I just, whatever, got an F. And she'd be like, Jason. And it'd be like calming. It's crazy. Like you probably know what I'm talking about, and it was just calming. So like when she asked me to like, hey, did you want to come to the house and help? Like I was like, oh yeah. For sure. And I have a little competitive nature to me, so I was like, I'm going to clean up more trash than these guys combined. So I just worked hard,
Isn't that interesting that, here's, the most famous mixologist, not only in Hawaii, but in the country, in the world, whatever, he's certainly in that realm.
Yeah.
And it shows you how small Hawaii is, that we are all connected. Because I remember one night when Jason came back, he wanted to see you, and you were working at Manifest still then, okay?
Yeah.
So we stopped by, and then he was talking about you, et cetera, and then he said, he showed me a picture of you carrying a chair, and you were in the park going to smoke a cigar, but it looked like me from behind. Yeah. And then like a week later, I was telling Cully this story, and he shows me a picture of you at, I think it was Ala Moana or something, with the same thing, and I thought it was crazy that two of our sons, for different reasons, two different generations. That shows you. We shouldn't talk so much about the family. This is not a family show.
Yeah,
this is really.
It's just natural, right?
So
that's how it began.
That's how it began.
Yeah.
Well, and let's talk about the beginning a little bit too. So you started, you had mentioned the last time we talked story that you were working or opened up a sports bar before you started working at Bar 35.
Yes. So I worked at Buca de Beppo as my first
Bar
job
gig.
in the, I wouldn't even be behind the bar. I was just a server, a food server, you know? And that was I got hired. I took a break from going to school in New Mexico for a little bit. My mother's side of the family has ties in New Mexico, so I went to school there because I got in-state tuition.
Mm-hmm. What were you studying?
I was just getting my prerequisites, but I was going to go into architectural design. Super boring. So anyway, I came back home to Hawaii because I missed it. And initially I left because like at that point everyone was moving away. Like Jason and everyone went to Seattle, and you know I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to like see more stuff. So I traveled. But I came home on a break, and I decided to stay. So I was like, oh, I gotta get a job. So I got a job at Buca de Beppo. It just opened, and I had no experience. I walked in trying to be like, I probably Googled, not Google, what was that? Like Yahoo'd at that time. Like, what do you do to get a job? So I went in there and I just asked for the boss. I was like, hey, can I speak to the boss? And then the guy who actually greeted me at the door was the GM. So he was like, yeah, that's me. I was like, I'm here for a job, and whatever. I was like 19 at that time. Just about to turn 20, got a job there. And then over a course of I worked there for 4 years. But I love the industry, like sharing story. Like, it was just cool to me. It was cool to me to like that you could make a living off of just talking story, because essentially that's what you're doing. I didn't have to like cook any of the food, but if I knew a lot about the food, you could sell more food, and you sold more food. In theory, you got more.
Well, and the
tips,
talking
right?
Story aspect is connecting to your guests is essentially what you're...
For sure,
Yeah.
100%.
It helped lay the groundwork for what you do today.
Yeah. And it always it baffled me because there was some people that worked in the bar, and coming in there at such a young age, these guys were like veterans, like people just hop around new restaurant.
Yeah.
And these guys, it's just so jaded.
Yeah.
Almost like hated what they did.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, I love coming here. It's like, it's fun. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience, but I had an opportunity to open a place with two of the managers at Buca, and it was a sports bar. It's called Richter's. It was in Discovery Bay. It was about a 1.5 year project. It closed, but I learned a lot, like so much.
But you got pulled into the bar at Buca de Beppo and then went to do
No,
that.
so I got the opportunity to work in the bar at Buca de Beppo, but then at that same time, this opportunity to open a place with the same guys who were giving me the opportunity to work in the bar. So I was like, okay, cool. Whatever money I had, I put it into this new project, which wasn't much. I was 24 at the time and didn't know nothing. I knew that we wanted to feature sports. We wanted to somehow tie in like mixed drinks at the time. So I made my first menu ever, like a Long Island iced tea. What I had, I call it a top shelf Long Island or something like that. I don't know. Whatever it was, but
And what's in that top shelf? Long
yeah,
Island?
it was. I think what made it top shelf was like Captain Morgan
Ooh.
was the rum instead of like a silver rum. So spiced. It was a secret. But
So let me ask you a question. So first of all, what did those two experience specifically? What kind of foundations did it help you establish moving forward?
Work ethic, for sure, because I was the youngest of the group by some 30 years, So it was kind of known going into it that I was going to be the horse.
Yeah.
So I was there for I got there when it opened 10 a.m. and I left when we closed at 2 a.m. like every single day. And on Sundays 7 a.m. because it was football, right? So I got my reps in like a lot over the 1.5 years.
Reps at bartending or other?
Everything. When
Hustle.
and it kind of it gave me the first experience of bar ownership, because working at Buca, the toilet breaks, you just tell the manager calls someone to fix it. You own a bar, the toilet breaks, you fix the toilet.
Yeah, you're not calling someone and dropping $100. Yeah,
exactly. So at that time I was like, yeah, own a bar, or whatever. But you don't think about those things.
Yeah.
So for me, it was good because it was a good introduction into the industry.
Well, and at Buka, when you clock out, you're done at work. When you own your own spot, you're always on the clock.
There's not even a clock.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So, okay, that's some of the technical or the knowledge that you acquired. But, now at Bar Leather Apron, you're very noted for hospitality as well. So what did those two restaurants, did it help you to at all help set a foundation of true hospitality?
Oh, absolutely. So I was getting into the work ethic side, right? Now, the difference between the bar we had at that time and the bar that was across the street was we had the same bottles on the back bar. Maybe we had a better happy hour. But like that, to me, that wasn't like a difference. There wasn't no difference. And by the time I started really getting into the hospitality side of it, I mean, it was a sports bar. It's kind of divey. So it is what it is, but there's still a way to kind of like connect with your guests, right?
Right.
And whether it be like contractors who are in town for just a week, whatever, but it's a familiar face, and when you create a familiar face creates a familiar scenario, and it's comfortable. So like immediately I was like, okay, cool. These guys come in, they just drink beers, like they don't, like I'm not a pretty woman, they're not here for that, but they're still here. So it's something like the way they felt, right? So it kind of like got me thinking, or I guess subconsciously, like you have to make people feel good in order for their experience to be good, right? It's a part of the experience.
Create a comfort zone.
For sure. And then, it abruptly closed, and then I was kind of like in limbo where I was like, I don't want to say I was burnt out, but I just worked really hard.
Yeah.
And I just saw something close, so I was like, I just want to take a back seat and work at somewhere where I don't make the calls, I just work. And
It's just a job.
Yeah, for sure. And Bar 35 was that.
And that was a happening spot.
Yeah,
that
crazy.
Was
it was
the Chinatown focal point for
that was like that was 12 years ago now. So 2007 or 2008.
Did you work with Chandra there?
Chandra was there, but Chandra was only there on like the busy first Fridays and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I knew Chandra because my first job when I was just out of high school was at CPK. I was a dishwasher, and Chandra was a server. And I remember Chandra, and I know she's probably gonna watch this, and she'll remember it too. Like I was in the back, like washing dishes, and like of course I was like, I'm just gonna do it as hard as I can. And
Chandra, by the way, is another famous mixologist.
yeah, and just a amazing person in general. But so Chandra would always come in the back, and they have the pass where you give the dirty plates, and she'd be like, put it down real softly, and other guys would throw it. I'd grab the plate, and be like, oh, I'm supposed to smash that guy, But I was like 18 years old, But Chandra would come back and be like, here, honey, sorry. She felt bad, and I was just like,
that's how Cheryl is.
And that dish pit goes off, too.
Nuts. And then like one day I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. But I could do that. I was very young, so I was like, just quit, whatever.
So when did the cocktail thing really start coming into fold?
So after Bar 35, so Bar 35 had a cocktail menu. I wasn't too into it as far as like creating anything to do with that side of it, but I did notice that people liked ordering it because I was in charge of refilling everything. So I'd be like, oh, I keep having to buy lychee because lychee was like the martini at the time, right? The flavor. So I started to get into cocktails, I guess, in that sense.
Like
but
seeing
then,
what people are ordering.
Yeah,
kind of sense,
yeah. Beyond just like the things that like Jack and Coke. Or whatever, like a Cosmo.
Yeah.
Well, even Cosmo's a cocktail,
That's.
But I'm just saying, like the two callers, like gin and tonic.
Yeah.
Like
Vodka soda.
Vodka soda. Because you actually have to make the Cosmo, So that was like, it was cool. But a lot of people look at it as like, oh, I hate doing that. But I never hated it. I was like, this is rad, because I get to like, you're like a chef.
Yeah.
Right there, right? Mm-hmm. So then, but by that time, Brandon Reed, who's the owner of Manifest, who worked with me at Bar 35 too, who I've been friends with since elementary school, just like Jason. We all know each other. He's like, I want to open a bar across the street. And at that time, Chinatown was like gnarly. I mean, it's still gnarly, but it was like there's Bar 35 next door and 39 Hotel Street. And that was on one side of the block. The other side of the block, nothing.
Yeah.
Like just homeless, drugs, all that kind of stuff. So we were the first ones to take the leap over to that side of the street. And
that's where all the Micronesian bars were. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was I can't remember the name of the bar. It was called like, it was bad though. It was really bad. It was really bad. And so we opened Manifest, and like I kind of got that same feeling, when I had it at Richter's. I was like, well, what makes us different other than we're new?
like you said, we have the same alcohol as they have across the street.
You know, same. And they had a following, so we couldn't like be like, hey, we have Chimay on special as well, you know, because they already had that following for many, many years. So that's when I started to get into not cocktails, but spirits. So gin was my first like delve into the spirits world. And I was like, sweet, I'm going to order every gin that I can order that Hawaii distributors have to offer, and I'm just going to learn about it. So our back bar slowly became full of, you know, Stoli, Blueberry came off, and then we replaced with Ransom, like Old Tom Gin or something like that. But it was a little hard to explain to the guests, like, hey, I know you think of gin as one thing, but like, let me tell you all about the botanicals. Like, they didn't really want to hear that, you know? I mean, some did, but some didn't. But so I started to learn about whiskey, and, you know, and whiskey at that time was coming up. It was like 10 years ago about, and it was like right when whiskey started getting really popular, beyond like the old whiskey drinkers. And then that transitioned into cocktails from there. So, and my thought process, wait, you can just bump in at any time. I'm just kind of going off, but my thought process was, okay, I'm going to learn about spirits and in a roundabout way, learn about classic cocktails because, you know, it makes sense. And I'm going to learn how to make cocktails, and I'm going to have a cocktail list at Manifest. That way, we won't be similar to any bar on the street. Well, 39 Hotel Street kind of was that. Christian played a big role as far as inspiring me to get into cocktails. But and
it was like an art gallery, like really
yeah,
cool
it was like
space.
all like DJs and that kind of stuff, you know, which is essentially.
You're talking about Christian Self?
Yeah.
Christian Self.
Wow.
Yeah.
He had this space where Chin Chin is now upstairs.
Yeah.
So it's like all white art gallery.
He had his cocktail thing going, and it was really cool, like using fresh herbs, you know. And we were in Chinatown, so you could before a shift you could go source all your stuff, bring it back to the bar, wash it like 10 times, really good, and then, you know, use fresh
sitting outside.
Yeah. So use fresh things like in your cocktails, and it was really fun, and I guess like inspiring. So. Yeah.
So let me ask you, so you go bar 35, you go to Manifest. At which time did you really start getting into competitions, and maybe what led you into that whole arena?
I think it was 2010. I did my first one, and it was held at Duvin. What was before Duvin? What was it called? Do you remember?
That's before my time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so anyway, they had a Campari, which is like a Italian citrus bitter. Yeah. They had a competition, and competitions were like always different, right? Like they were either sponsored by brands and you win a prize, or you go on to the next level, like nationally, internationally, whatever. But my thought process with entering cocktail competitions was, if I do well, you know, and you get your name printed in a newspaper or on some website. Instagram wasn't even a thing yet. It's kind of, I feel dated.
So paper in print, delivered on your doorstep.
If your name got put on Asian Avenue or MySpace, then you would people would come to your bar. You'd be like, oh, I saw you on this thing. I want to try your cocktail, whatever. And it was a way for me to promote, I guess, pre-major social media, right?
Like, if I'm gonna do well in these contests, people are gonna come to my bar and
they want to try it, you know. And then and once they're in and they're sat, then they're already like, I have a captive audience. Then I can really like show beyond that cocktail they read about what we have. Yeah, you know. So to me that was fun, because there wasn't much business in the early part of the evening, but the people who would come, we had this little like 3-hour window where it was like just cocktails. Yeah. You know, and we would play like, you know, old jazz music, and where
it was classy spot.
Yeah, for sure. Like we were trying to make it that, you know, like not in a very like loose way.
Yeah. I have a question too. So Manifest would turn into kind of more of a nightclub spot.
For sure.
And I was just talking to Courtney the other day about this, about how she would go in there and order an old fashioned during like power hour. Yeah. Is that, and I would always I'd be like, dude, I'm not gonna do that to this guy. Like, make a handcrafted cocktail when it's like packed in here. Did you?
So it was definitely like, for me, I loved doing it. It didn't matter. Like to me, it took the same amount of time to chill a shot and make a back that it did to add 3 ingredients to a mixing glass and stir it, right? But yeah, it was pretty crazy. We were making like 10 at a time, you know, for that short 2.5 hour window where we were very busy.
But it was also cool too that you're in this like nightclub kind of scene and people are walking around with crafted drinks.
No, so that really got me thinking, like, hey, like they're coming to like essentially a club, but they're still ordering cocktails. So something about it was catching, right? Yeah. You know, and then over the years, so many people have been like, oh, I used to come in there and drink Red Bull vodka, and you made me old fashioned, and thank you for changing my drinking. When I was like, I didn't do that. You just, you know, it was just whatever. They just tried something new, and it just happened to be way better. Yeah. You know. So back to the competition thing, doing well, got your name out, and people would come visit you. So I did one that took the prize. It wasn't necessarily a prize. It was like you entered into like the national or regional competition, right? And then fast forward, I did well in that one, and I qualified for this other one, which eventually led me to winning that one and representing the United States in a world cocktail competition. So that was like that was a course of like a year and a half that happened, but it was really eye-opening because I was preparing to represent both, I mean, like Hawaii, you know, my family, and like the U.S. at this point. So I was like, you know, going to the national competition, you're like, yeah, Hawaii, you know, like that was like my UFC, like whatever. But then to represent like the whole country, you know, like it was a lot of pride. Yeah, like 100%. A lot of pride, you know,
especially being from Hawaii.
Yeah, like the most isolated place on earth to like representing the whole country of America. So.
I think that's so cool. You know, I mean, if you talk to Ariana and Chris Romelb and Micah Sudam and all these sommeliers that get to travel, you know, you talk to them, why did you jump into this thing? And they always say, I got to represent Hawaii. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, so I think that is so cool, you know, that you want to make sure you do your family proud, your industry proud, you know, your profession proud. I think that's really great.
And I took it as a big responsibility because, you know, like coming up in this industry in cocktails, like I didn't necessarily have a mentor per se, but I wanted to represent like all the people who don't think you can really get anywhere from Hawaii in that thing. You know, like I was at the top level.
Like you said, it's like watching like someone like BJ Penn.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like you can. It's very relatable because you come from a small island, you come from a small town, you come from a small city, whatever. Yet you're representing on the largest stage.
Well, and what Chris talks about too is like
Chris Romelb.
You know, people wouldn't expect people from Hawaii to be good at wine or good at cocktails. Like there's no.
But why? That's the thing. Yeah. But why? And I always ask people that because we're not a major market, so we don't get a lot of the
publicity
or like
notoriety
and stuff. But on my trips where I travel to like, you know, New York City or whatever, all over the world, we're not that far behind. You know, if we're ahead.
So let me say this. So you guys are bringing up a couple of topics here. So first thing I want to say is that, you know, one of my biggest mentors was Charlene Goodness. So back in, I would say the 70s, you know, the top hotel, not only in Hawaii, but in the Pacific Basin was considered the Kahala Hilton, right? It was number one in the Pacific Basin. And the general manager at that time, who's a legendary, iconic person in the hotel business, he made Charlene Goodness the manager of the Miley restaurant. The number one restaurant in the Pacific Basin. Wow. She was 19 years old.
Wow.
She was local. Now, please understand, back then, the managers of the finest restaurants, the chefs of the finest restaurants were imports. And the last thing, she was female. And so to watch someone like that break the barrier, you know, so even when it came to chefs from my generation, I'm like a few years younger than her. When I was managing La Mer or Bagwell's, I was one of the few local guys, right? I mean, same thing with chefs. It was Alan Wong Roy that broke the barrier, broke the change. So when he asks why, we have to understand that, you know, it's very important. It's not only to represent Hawaii, but to show that we shouldn't only be the dishwasher in the back of the house. We have expertise. And I told you the story right before we started going on here. I was chairman of the Court of Master Sommeliers, chairman of education for the Court of Master Sommeliers, right? Back in the early 90s, late 80s, right? For 10 years. And I remember in 1991, I think it was you was asking me, for level 3, the next highest level, which Chris is one of them, Tato, all these guys. Back in 1991, there was only 16 people across the country that qualified for level 3. That was it, only 16. 8 were from Hawaii. Mm-hmm. So it was a time. Richard Field, Ariana's father-in-law now, Richard Field, Our Field Wine Company. I mean, he was one of the guys. Kevin Toyama, Mark Shishido from Alan Wong's. These were, we in Hawaii, like he said, we had game.
And even Chris Ramel would say that there was a running joke that if you even wanted to become a master sommelier, you had to be from Hawaii.
And I wanted just to add to that for Justin's sake, so managing La Mer restaurant, Mark Shishido was actually a bartender. And the head bartender during my era was a guy named Randy Uechi, who was at Vintage Cave later. And then the beverage manager was Willie Lai. They both came from the Hawaiian region and were understudies. They were mentored by Leo Sato. If you had a Leo Sato trained bartender working for you, he was Leo Sato trained.
That's awesome.
They made, lemon twist to order, the way that they polished their glasses, the way that they prepped their ice, everything that they did. They didn't have the ice cubes like you do, but they at least still spent some time prepping the ice, et cetera, so that they knew that they would use this for this kind of drink. And there was just detail.
Was the same.
It was just detail. Just detail. Mm-hmm. And that was vastly different from, the fastest draw in the West kind of bartenders that were, the Point After, all those hotshot nightclubs where bartenders would have 19 drinks.
The Point After was a nightclub?
Yeah.
That's a good name.
You remember that?
I don't.
That is a good
Actually,
name.
Chuck, everything
it's where Sansei is.
It's kind of destiny.
Oh, below.
I think it's destiny because everything you're talking about, while you were doing that, I was sitting right there. But I was like 12 years old eating cheeseburgers. Yeah. But it's meant to be. Now we're here, just 10 feet away.
Hey, you want to talk about cheeseburgers later?
We're the best, the Terry cheeseburger.
Did you read that?
No, you told me. Me.
Wait, so, and to keep talking about your journey, Dad always asks people about what their aha moments are with wine. What was your aha moment with cocktails or a bar that you're like, this is what I want my place to be like?
Yeah.
Or an experience or anything that you can share.
Watching your guys' podcasts, I already tried to think of that answer in my head, knowing that it may come. And I can't say one exact moment, because I don't think of that aha moment as a cocktail or as a spirit. I think of it as the moment, many times where I was able to have people sit at the bar because they heard about what we're doing and they're interested, and it allowed me to share. So it wasn't like one moment. It was like, I would say it's maybe 8 years ago, 2012, when we really started pushing the cocktails, and people would come in and be like, oh, can I see the cocktail menu? And that to me was the moment. I was like, okay, so these people
we're onto something.
Yeah, exactly. These people are coming down to what's essentially a destination bar, because Chinatown wasn't, you had to go there.
Yeah.
Most people didn't live down there, but they came down there for that. And to me, that was like the moment.
Well, and especially people that aren't really from here, they're coming to Hawaii, and that's something on their list.
So we experienced more of that at Leather Apron, with more of the, I guess, the national
and international.
Yeah, and international like press and notoriety, but yeah, even more so. And people, Leather Apron, we do most of our business through reservation. Mm-hmm. So you have people putting in reservations, a month ahead of time, like planning out their trip. And we can't forget that we live in a place where people save their whole lives to visit.
Yeah.
They're like, this is their
dream.
Their dream. Yeah. I want to go to Hawaii. Yeah. And for them to spend one night or however many hours of the 6 nights they have while they're here, that is, to me, is an honor. They choose to be in the seat in front of me or us, right? So that right there is like, it's huge,
But Cully, imagine that. Just imagine that concept. That, in this day and age, or I don't know if it's still as current as it used to be, of the star chef and sitting in front of Nobu at the sushi bar, or sitting, and having a menu degustation at the French Laundry, that the chef is just, making for you, it's special, this whole thing. Now imagine, first of all, how much that costs to operate a thing like that. And then the segue then for me would be what Justin Park did was take it to beverage.
Yeah.
Imagine having a bar where you make reservations and you're allowed, this seat is going to, you have it from this time to this time. That's your reservation. And Justin's going to sit there and make you some of the most interesting nuances, not just power drinks, nuance, balance.
Technical.
No, but hugely about balance.
Yeah.
Balance of
or
flavors.
experience in general.
And imagine to be successful at having a bar where you're taking reservations and someone tries to walk in, sorry, that seat is taken until, and they're coming in 10 minutes or something. Imagine being successful and being the rage. Not only locally, but nationally and internationally. That's like changing the game here in Hawaii.
It was when we first opened. It was pretty at Leather Apron. It was pretty difficult because it was such a different concept. People come in, they're like, when you hear the word bar, right, we're dealing with a lot with it now with like everything that's happening. You think it's one thing, but like the word restaurant, is every restaurant the same thing? No, it's not, right? So people would come in and they'd be like, oh, I'm just gonna sit right here. But like, oh, unfortunately, we have a reservation coming. And we always try to be.
There's a way to finesse bad
for
news
sure,
like that.
every single time. Like you never want to. They're already in the door, so their experience matters, right? Because they may sit down after that and they may stay for an hour and they may be like, that was the best, whatever.
I'm coming back.
Yeah, and they forget about that door thing. But it was tough because people had a perception of what it is, and when they would come and be like, fortunately we have a reservation coming in, it'd be like, oh, you guys are, what's the word people always used to say, like not pompous, but like too good for us or something like that. Yeah, they wouldn't say that, but yeah, that's
pretentious.
Pretentious. Yeah, exactly. And like, of course, I would just greet it with a smile and explain what we're doing. But I was like, inside, I was like, I just want to do something different.
Yeah.
And if you just gave me the opportunity to show you something different, you would open up your mind. Like, you know what I mean? So that was like
like what Dad is saying about like sitting at a chef's table or whatever. That's essentially what sitting at the bar at Bar Leather Apron is. It's your chef's counter or chef's table. Yeah. Omakase.
Expertise. And it opens up a new whole horizon. Same thing with all this sommelier talk. You think about it. So many chefs-driven restaurants. It's because the chef has a gift to make artistry on the plate. Taste-wise, smell-wise, experience-wise, visually, all that stuff, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of our goal.
But my whole point of the story is, how many times do you go to a restaurant and the wine list is underachieving, underwhelming? Because the expertise is all in the kitchen. And you could say that the same is true with the bar, right? So there was a generation of chefs that started to more promote because it's a revenue source, and also a visual marketing source of having a master sommelier or an expert on wine doing not only the wine list but also the pairings, and then to have a mixologist, coming up with these special drinks that you could not only have only there, but also it would be better attuned to what you're eating, so that you're broadening your reach as a restaurant and also broadening your potential source for revenue. So you're seeing that happen more and more, and I get it. But then here's a guy that decides to do it, and on bars,
Well, and let's talk about that attention to detail and that experience, because in your Servco Lexus masterclass thing, you talk about it's not just the ingredients in the glass, it's the glassware, it's the ice, it's the everything. Ambiance, the setting. For sure. Where did that, even to the point where Ariana commented that you flew to Japan to hand carry your glassware onto the plane. Yeah. Where did that attention of detail come from, or that where did that inspiration or that,
so
concept
that came, I know I can explain exactly where it came from to me, but kind of to touch on what Chuck just said, like all those things, I'm always like, why can't we? Like, why can't I? Maybe not, like, I'm not going to speak back to someone I respect, like, whoa, why not? because I don't do that. I'm like, I was a student of martial arts my whole life, and you had a sensei, and that was your thing. You know, this is how you do it. That's how you do it. If I believe in you to be like, I trust you to be my teacher, I'm going to do what you say because I believe in you, right? So like, but that was always the thing. Like, why can't we do a reservation system at a bar where we have 2.5 hour slots for people? Why can't we do it? And, you know, and for me, it was never good enough that like, well, people just don't do that. Like, I would rather fail at trying to do something special and unique than to never try it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking about when you have reservations and the person comes late or whatever.
Yeah.
You're losing possible turns.
Yeah, for sure.
And so for revenue wise, it's better to have walk-in business.
Oh no, definitely.
You know,
no,
so
100%,
that's
100%.
what I was thinking about. Is Justin limiting
Yeah.
his potential revenue?
So we do most of our business through reservation at Leather Apron, but we always.
That's what the lounge is for and stuff,
Yeah.
is for walk-ins, right?
Yeah, well, the lounge and the bar too. It just depends on the time. And like, so we map out the evening's reservations. There's a 15-minute grace period if you're late. Then we'll reset it if someone's waiting. And like, it doesn't matter. Like, we could be completely full from top to bottom, but the moment we start, someone's 10 minutes late. A party of 2 turns to 3. A party of 4 turns to 2. It's super dynamic.
Right. Right.
So that's why
that's restaurants.
That's why even more so, our team has to be really in tune to what's happening. And there's like
and create tempo.
Yeah, there's this crazy like nonverbal communication that goes on while we work, almost like signals, you know, because we need to know like what's happening. And but yeah, that's kind of like we grew into that. We didn't have this at the start, but when you talk about attention to detail, my business partner Tom Park and I opened Bar Leather Apron in 2016. Leather Apron was a concept that started because we were doing VIP events at his shoe shop called Leather Soul for his VIP customers. And it was a very controlled environment. There was like 10 people there. I had everything set up. Everything was prepped, you know, and it was just about execution and about sharing, whether it be the whiskey we're pouring, the cocktail we're making. And people were really in tune to it because it wasn't loud. It wasn't overly crowded, but it created this like, this experience for these people who maybe, and myself, who like weren't expecting that, you know, and I was like, this is pretty rad. We should look into this, Tom. We should open a bar. And like, we kind of joked back and forth, and he went to school in Japan. He's like, oh, you got to go to Japan. And this just happened to coincide with a trip that I took to Cape Town, South Africa in 2014.
For a competition.
It's called the WCC. It's the World Cocktail Championship. And every country has 2 representatives. The first one is a classic competitor, and the second is a flair. So like tossing bottles and stuff like that. So I was the U.S. representative in 2014 and 16 and three more times, but there's 2 every year. So I represented our country and Hawaii and everyone like a bunch of times, but every time I went and it was a global or international, like Japan was always like on point. Whether it be like the gift they give to the other competitors, like, oh, this thing's like wrapped 4 times and it's really just like a piece of chocolate, you know? But like, and I had never been to Japan at that point, but I was like, this is crazy. Like, at first I'm thinking, why do they waste so much? But really it's about presentation, right? And it's about attention to detail. So while I was preparing for that competition in 2014, should I tell the whole story?
Yeah, tell the whole story.
I couldn't find anywhere in the US that could give me information on it other than like the very basic parts of it, right? So it's broken up into categories. So I drew the category of after dinner drink. Yeah. So there are certain flavor profiles and a category that you have to kind of fall within as far as ingredients and flavor profiles. And all the information I tried to find as far as like the technical aspect, because you are judged on the technical aspect of it,
right.
like how you make the drink. What like in
Your
the US,
technique,
the technique, yeah, exactly. It was like I couldn't find anything. So I looked on YouTube and I found this. It's like it said NBA, WCC cocktail preparation, and I was like NBA, like what? But it meant Nippon Bartenders Association. So it's the equivalent of what we call in the U.S. as a USBG, United States Bartenders Guild. But it was a bartender who I didn't know at the time making a cocktail, totally silent, but like just looked like art, like the way he was making it. You know, like for instance, if I was gonna pass this wine to Chuck, right? He would like it's very easy to just grab it and give it to Chuck, but he would place it, you know, and he would never crossbody. And to me, I was like, that's kind of like subtle, but like it's pretty next level because you're always facing like your audience, right?
Crossing body, like turning your shoulder.
Yeah, so like if I'm gonna grab something like right here, I'm not gonna do this. Although I'm like right hand prominent, it's just much more like visually appealing if you grab with your left and pass it to your right.
And it's less. Same thing when you pour wines with Japanese. If you cross, it's not
offensive.
Yeah, borderline offensive, but it's because there's
if your
so much
elbows
attention
in
to
their
detail.
face and stuff like that. So that's why what he's saying is everything is open. So that it's not feng shui, but feng shui or whatever you call it. It's just
every movement is purposeful.
Yeah.
So that to me is attention to detail, right?
Yeah.
So I literally watched this guy's YouTube video on how to make he was making a stirred cocktail thousands of times on repeat on the iPad, and I would just like mimic his movements. So fast forward to the actual competition, it was a random drawing, and I drew the same round as Japan. So like it was Mexico, it was the U.S., and it was Japan. So, you know, you have a time limit. You have to make your garnish, you know. And I'm like looking around. I was like, that guy looks kind of familiar. But I was so focused on what I was doing that I didn't like look up once, you know. My wife's like, take a picture. And I'm like, no picture. So, laser eyes, right? So then I go on stage and you're carrying this like tray with all your glasses and all your ingredients. And there was like 1,500 people there in this huge auditorium in Cape Town, South Africa. And I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. So I like set my thing down. My goal was just not to drop anything. Because if you drop something and it breaks, like you can't complete your cocktails and you're disqualified. Yeah. So I was setting up, you know, and I finally got to a point where I was comfortable. And there was like 2 minutes, just under 2 minutes left on the clock to set up. And I like set up and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I had felt like I had done that like thousands of times in my head and actually doing it. And I looked up and then the guy on the video was standing right in front of me, and I was like, oh, I like felt like I lost everything. Anyway, it started, and it was kind of like I didn't even think about it anymore. I just made the cocktail. All right, I did it, and I finished. And while we were making it, the Japanese bartender actually like knocked over a glass in his preparation, and I could feel like the Japan contingency be like, you know, and
like the air sucked out of their room.
Yeah, you know, and I was like, oh, it's a disappointment, right? And I was like, oh my God.
So you get disqualified at that point.
Yeah, like well, he still finished, but you don't get graded on that. So there's no possible way to make a winning score, right? And the whole time, like the U.S. contingency was right in front of me, and they were like, yeah, go, like USA, and I was just like, I'm more Japanese than I am USA in my like presentation, I guess, because that's
culture.
And culture, yeah. Being from Hawaii for one, and for two, being how I prepared for it was very much like controlled, right? So. Fast forward, we finish. I walk off the stage, and the guy who I saw on the video walks over. His name is Takafumi Yamada. He's like, Justin, you have very much so a Japanese style. And I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. Because he didn't speak much English, and I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to explain to him, but I have your style from YouTube. And he was like, oh. So I pulled it up, and he's laughing, whatever. Anyway, he invites me to Japan, to Yokohama. I visit his bar. You know, and that's like 16 trips ago. But I just so happened to go to Japan with Tom to visit. And it was just like eye-opening. You know, everything, not necessarily like the taste of the cocktail or like the taste of the food or whatever. Technique. It was just the technique and attention to detail.
Approach to it all.
You know, the ambiance of the
I went to a shop to buy like glassware, you know, and I bought it and I paid for it and I was leaving and the guy's like following me out. I was like telling my wife, I was like, did you take something? You know what I mean? Why is he following us? Like all the way to the elevator, you know, and we turn around, he'd be like, bow. I'm like, thank you again. I feel like I said thank you 10 times, right? But then the elevator door closes, he's bowing, and it hit me when it closed. It was like, he's genuinely like thanking us for being there.
Absolutely.
And that was like, boom.
So that's the thing I told you on a different podcast is that one time Cheryl and I were in Japan, and we noticed that whether it was breakfast, lunch, or dinner, every meal, the server was there to say goodbye to us as we exited the restaurant.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes the whole serving staff.
No, but the server did, and it again reminds you that they are considering what's best for the customer, not what's convenient for me, the server.
For sure.
And so it provides you insight into, they have a completely different perspective and intent on service.
And from the service side, like I always tell all of our team, like if someone's leaving or they're approaching the door, you need to address them. Because for one, they may be lost. For two, they may be leaving. And you're just giving that last, like, thank you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, though, I mean, just consider it. The customer's first and last impression happens at the door.
Sure.
So if you don't do it well or memorable or, genuine or whatever, communicate, connect, then, there's another thing that maybe they don't recommend your bar or your restaurant, down the road, all these little details, the difference between a Michelin 3-star restaurant and a Michelin 2-star restaurants is the details. So the more intricate you can get in the various details, then theoretically the higher the sophistication or level of your performance or your shtick.
The guys we have at Leather Apron, Paul and Scotty and Chris and Zalea and all the people, a team we've had for a long time. Sometimes like I feel like I'm beating a dead horse because I'll be like someone will walk out, and if I'm stuck at seat A, which is the first seat closest to all the inside of the bar, I'm obviously not going to yell over the bar to say goodbye. Yeah. But if I can see them and then they miss that opportunity, we go in the back. I'm like, you have to say, you have to stop whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter. And it has to be genuine. So if I'm holding dirty dishes and I'm walking the tray and Chuck's exiting, I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn to Chuck and I'm going to say, thank you so much for coming in. Not just like, oh, thank you.
When he talks about that a lot, like genuine hospitality isn't when it's convenient for you.
Sure.
What was you saying about
the true test of character or the aloha spirit is when things are most challenging.
Yes.
That's what separates, the real from the kind of like fake, I mean.
And a lot of how how I was trained and how many people are trained is like, it's just about that volume. It's just about the volume, And like people ask like, how do you like make Leather Apron bigger? Like, why don't you just get more seats? It's like, what? It's not about that. Like you have to, at some point you have to make a decision between the craft and the volume, because you can't have both.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But also you tinker with how you do it.
Sure. And you lose a sort of something special the larger you get, because you have to focus on more things and more things.
So that's why if you notice, of all of our restaurants, you would see me on the floor every night that it was open at Vino. And I was washing dishes. I was busting all watering tables and stuff like that. It's personal at a certain point.
For sure.
And then, so when we went down with the pandemic and we had to do takeout only, right? And we were doing kind of good volume, I made sure I was the guy that was taking the food out curbside.
So people could see your face.
So it wasn't that. I wanted to thank them.
Yeah.
You have all these restaurants, and I was sincere. I was really genuine with this thing. I wanted to look the person in the face, even though they couldn't see me with my mask. They didn't know who I was, maybe some of them. But I just wanted to say and look at them in their eye and say thank you very much for supporting us during these times. Thank you very much.
So to me, that a lot of what we're talking about is why I thought this podcast was going to be so interesting. Both your guys' ideologies and thought process are pretty similar. I don't know how much time you've spent with each other, but even to the point of like, when he talks about wine, a lot of the things that he focuses on is the balance of the wine, and you focus on the balance of the cocktail so much so that you have this whole handmade ice program that I hope we can feature on this podcast. But I think that the synergy between the two of you is very interesting,
Just understanding how everything impacts everything else is huge, Like you could crush 95% of it, but you fall short the last 5. You have room for improvement, And I say that to the guys all the time. I'm driving home, smoking a cigar. I actually used to see him at the park sitting down, get my chair out and sit next to him. I was like, dude, this is awesome. I would drive around Kaka'ako searching for Chuck. No joke. I'd be like, dude, he's going to be sitting somewhere. And I remember one time I found him. I got out and I was like, oh, Chuck, I got these Monte Cristo number 2. He's like, I'll smoke that. I just grabbed the one from the bottom of the shelf. I was like, dude, this guy's the man. But that like low key, I was like super fan, and following you in a roundabout way. We didn't talk at all what this is, but I've never been super crazy like into wine, learning about wine, but just super crazy about your passion towards something, whatever it is.
Thank you.
You know, yeah.
But I want to say this in reply to that. So the last time we were talking, he reminded me of this picture, and he still has the picture, I believe. I still have the picture. It was at the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival one night, and it's so funny that he would still have the picture, and he actually reminded me, and I kept the picture because it was a special moment, and it was he and I, and Micah Suderman, and Chris Ramel. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And what made that picture special to you?
Well, what made it special to me was like, you know, food and wine is a showcase of many things, right? Chefs, bartenders, or mixologists, or winemakers. Yeah. That particular event was the wine event, and we had like a little cocktail tent. But when I looked at that picture, I was like, these guys all inspire me for other reasons than what they're actually here for. You know what I mean? These guys are all wine guys, but like I could actually know. I don't know if I could have known less. I didn't know much, but I could have cared less that they were masters of wine. You know, it's just that they're genuine, they're passionate, and it shows. That's what it was. Like that. That's why that picture was so. And I looked at Chuck as like, and then not knowing, like, you know, the mentor to Ramel, and then Micah was really like mentoring. You know, all, like you were like
The
inspirational to these guys in their journey for not just wine, but like something they're passionate about. And to me, that was like, I was also that I felt like I was one of them too.
Okay, so that's his perspective. My perspective of the thing, of that picture, the reason why I kept it, and I did mention to him something about it that night as well. It was a picture of three people that I think are consummate professionals, you know, to the upteenth degree. If you look at that event, it starts at X amount of time. So do you come a half an hour before and start prepping the ice and prepping the wines to make sure label doesn't slip and all? You look at Ramel's wines, they were all wrapped with cellophane, like Kevin Toyama and Holly Kalani taught them, or Mark Shishido and Alan Wong's. Yeah, so it doesn't sweat so the labels don't move. I mean, so the very fact that that picture was taken way before it opened to the public, and here was three guys setting up and watching Chris Ramel and Micah wrap bottles so that in case it sweat, the label wouldn't move, you know, or all these different things, you know. And Justin Park being the headliner that he is, but to see three professionals there to set up, you know, to be prepared
too.
Be prepared for what, so that the customer would have the quintessential experience when they're in front of them, and to do it even though it was hot, it was sweaty, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the same time, if you look at all three, you know, their truly genuine sense of hospitality and graciousness. Come on, that to me is what professionals, in my opinion, should want to emulate. I mean, that's the standard, not whether you mix a drink without, you know, and using a stir stick or whatever. You know, just the sense of professionalism and the sense of genuine hospitality. That's what that picture reminded me of. Totally. You know, there's all these other people were setting up, but it wasn't the principals, the chefs. It wasn't the principal chefs and all that stuff. Same with the winemakers. It wasn't the principal winemakers that were setting up. It was Chris Ramel, Micah, and this young man.
So to me, when I hear that, I don't necessarily think that way, because like that's just a part of my makeup, right? To get in early, set up so you're prepared.
I mean, we talked about it in the backyard.
Yeah, but so it's crazy that he brings it up, because Chuck to me is like the sage. So he's done everything. He's done everything. He's seen everything, you know, so he knows. And he knows so much so that he's able to like see it when it's happening around him. But whereas like we're still coming up. So like, you know, there's just three things you need to be successful in the hospitality, successful at life. Let's say that, successful at life. You need to have heart first, right? And then you need to have technique, and then you need to have atmosphere. So Chuck has all those things already, so he's able to look back and be like, I see this happening. Whereas I'm still very much so learning that I'm focusing on the atmosphere at that point, you know, right? Because I've worked on the technique. I mean, I hope everyone sees that I have heart, because it's like this, you know. But yeah, it's crazy that you say that, and I see that, and I thank you.
No, and I don't know if you remember, but I told you that night, you know, because he's at he's at the top right now, right? He's the guy, right? And so I told him, just kind of remember where you came from, and play it forward.
I came from here. I came from over there on the couch.
But you understand what I'm saying? I mean, and that's the important thing. Otherwise, future generations, we're not setting them up to succeed.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So that's the point of that picture. That's
There's so much knowledge being shared right now.
Can you share a little knowledge on what we have in these glasses?
Yeah.
Because we poured it, but we didn't. We just jumped right in.
This wine is, at some point, guys, I don't mean to be rude, but I would like to get off this thing and have Ariana sit down because I know, is like, she wants to talk to you big time. So at some point,
maybe I want you to get off too. No, just kidding.
This is Justin Park. This is his podcast.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
No.
This is just a night out in the park for me. Okay, so both of these wines are made from the Syrah grape variety. So when I was growing up in this industry, there was what was considered 5 noble grapes. 5 grapes that were capable of making something majestic, world class, something otherworldly, right? So it was always Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, and Syrah for red. And the other 2 grapes were for white wines. They were Riesling and Chardonnay. So there's no doubt about it that Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay are the 3 most ballyhooed categories of wines, based upon the grape, right? But I just wanted to show you and the rest of the viewers, that the one that we should be talking about, the 2 we should be talking about more and more actually, is Riesling, and the other one is Syrah. And Justin, just so you're reminded, I think I told you this once before, but there's a producer named Jean-Louis Chave. So he's located in Hermitage, which is this hillside in the northern Rhone Valley of France. So the Chave family has owned and operated their steep hillside vineyards for 14 generations at least.
Wow.
So we're talking about Christopher Columbus's time, before Christopher Columbus, just to give you some sense of history. And it was always one of the top revered wines in the world, hardest to get, the most expensive, et cetera, et cetera. In the 1800s maybe, and moving forward, Bordeaux and Burgundy, people would say, took over in terms of being, top gun. But I always have a hankering for Syrah because it can have the elegance, the transparency, the purity, the finesse, the intricacy, the nuance of Pinot Noir, and not so heavy. But it could also have depth of power and mojo and virility and masculinity of Cabernet Sauvignon. So it would fit right in between. So if you have a table of 4, 2 people want Cabernet, 2 people want Pinot, I often turn to and offer well-grown and well-made Syrah. So I wanted to show you 2 cases. The glass on your right is a Syrah from California, and specifically from the Green Valley, which is part of the Russian River. It's right next to the Russian River Valley of Sonoma, California. Fred Scherer is a one-man show. He's one of my absolute favorite winemakers in the world. And he makes 200 cases of this, 400 cases of that, a really small production. His wines have incredible texture and incredible balance and layering. And, it's just so suave and textured. And the other thing, where a lot of wines may age, I don't know how many get better with age. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of older Scherer wines because at Vino we do a lot of BYOB dinners, bring your own bottle. And people would share older bottles of Scherer all the time. It blew my mind. He sets a standard for others to chase. There's no doubt about it. So this is one version of Syrah from the New World. Warmer climates, different kinds of soils, than other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And the second one comes from the northern Rhone Valley, down the river from Hermitage, but same kind of hillside thing. But actually, this one is up on top of the hillside. It's on the hilltop.
I know, but I don't know what Hermitage is. What's that?
It's a hillside. Yeah, okay. It's a hillside in the northern Rhone Valley. So this is 100%. Both of these are 100% Syrah, and I just wanted to show you that you can see it's not as thick as the Californian. It's lighter. It's higher acid. It's more perky. It's more virile. It's more peppercorn. More earthy, gamey, beef jerky, smoked meat, something like that. So again, so So this is just a Syrah from the Northern Rhone. I just wanted to give you an inkling that where the grapes are grown can greatly affect the outcome of a wine.
Sure.
You know, it's the concept of the Kula onion. There's something very unique about Kula Maui that results in a special onion. Neighboring Makawao, for whatever reason, the onion is not as special. I don't know why, but you know. So this wine is from a producer called Lionel Faury. I'm part of a pretty interesting wine event in Paso Robles, California. It's called Wine Speak, and we have speakers from all over talking about topics like Syrah. And so you have, let's say, two panelists. We don't know each other. We know each other by reputation, but we don't know each other. So here's an opportunity for you to share what and how, what you do, insights, experiences, whatever. Then it's my turn. Now let's talk story. Let's share information inside. That's what we created.
Every year?
3 years.
Every 3 years.
No, I mean, just the past 3 years.
Okay.
So this past year, I want to tell you a story about this
And
guy
is Fred
quick.
Scher the main host of that?
Well, he came year 2. This guy, Faury, came year 3. Ariana came to 2 and 3 years. I mean, year 3. I mean, so Michael was
Still
there.
waiting
Chris
to get invited,
Romel.
by the way.
Yeah. So you understand, just like your question about rosé. Wait, the crickets are busy right now. So
They've been talking to me about like, oh, you should have your own wine of the week segment, or like you should talk about.
Don't say the wine though.
Yeah, I won't say the wine. And I was like, so I've been like thinking, like I go to the wine shop a lot now, and I like was so stoked. I was at this dinner party and I like bought this rosé, and I was like, oh, this is really good. And I sent it to Ariana and my dad, and I was like, hey, like, you know, if you guys really want me to do a wine of the week segment, this is the wine I would talk about. And no one responded.
Well, to you at least. They responded to each other.
And then he goes something about crickets. So I said,
no, I was like, so is this not a good wine? Because all I'm getting is crickets. And my dad's like, what is crickets? And I was like, but no one's commenting on this wine. And then that was it. Nothing. So
Yeah.
my wine of the week segment gets to not come in.
So Justin, back to serious conversation instead of listening to someone whine. You know,
You can tell me what it is after.
Yeah.
but I just wanted to show you, where today's wines are bigger, blacker, louder, more opulent, more decadent, more, Here's wines that show finesse and sensibility, civility,
I can taste
texture, and balance. That's what I love about these
Are these expensive wines?
So that's the exciting thing. Thank you for asking me. So this wine, I don't see this wine too frequently because the production is so small. But once in a while, our field wine company, Kailua, has it. And just so you understand, I don't mean to back any specific store, but at the same time, I want people to go in and ask for the wines. Otherwise, all the wine selections of all these stores are getting more and more commercial stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I mentioned a brand where I would buy it from. So this other wine here.
How much was the sharer, though?
I think it was $42. Yeah, $42. I think it was. Okay, this other wine. I was so thrilled. I was calling everybody because I found it at Fujioka's one day. Oh no, sorry. I found his other bottling, Saint Joseph, which is another hillside. Okay, it's a different hillside, but same producer, same techniques. Old-fashioned way, not new Fandango way, old-fashioned way, okay? And I was so thrilled that I found this thing, but I was actually looking for this wine, and so I was a little disappointed. And then Cully texted me that night, and he said his friend who helps us with the filming sometimes, this guy Luke, texted Cully a bottle that he had that night that he found at the store, and it was this wine. And I was going, where the hell did he get that wine? And he goes, Fujioka's, and I said, I was just there today. They didn't have that wine. I was looking for that wine. They didn't have it. And he goes, no, he bought it, and they're having for dinner or something tonight.
$20.99.
$20.99. I was down there the next day. First, I called to make sure they had it, and they go, yeah, we got it, man. So I went down. I kept looking for it because I was just there the day before. $20.99 for this wine. Wow.
I have two things came to mind when you said that. So the first is I deal with that a lot on a pretty nightly basis when we're open about like people asking about spirits and where to buy them. And I always recommend I actually always recommend Fujioka's, and it's not because of price, because sometimes there's other places that have better prices, but the feeling I get when I go into the store and you're able to ask a question and you have a knowledgeable answer, I'd rather pay it $2 more for that, right? Because you feel better about it and like you're more comfortable. The second thing I thought was, how do you not know when stuff like that comes in?
Because Chris Ramel, he stashes, bro.
Ah, that's it. Yeah.
So when
Chris
I
Ramel,
was
you stasher.
when I was in there buying, I bought like 6 bottles or 8 bottles of this stuff.
Yeah.
That that I didn't want to take away everything, but I bought like 8 bottles so that Cheryl could take it to Missy on the North Shore and enjoy it, And so when I was doing that, Chris walked in the store and he was watching me, and he goes, "Brah, don't take it all, man. That's why I never told you about it. So that boy stashes, man."
I do have one thing I would like to say.
Okay, here. Wait, talk right into the mic.
The one
This
thing
is
I would
Ariana
say
Suchia.
is that Chuck texted me, "Go buy this wine." I went down and they literally said, "You're lucky you have anything left," because Chuck's been telling everyone and we're almost sold out. I'm like, "Well, thank you. I have these last 2." And he said, "But don't worry, Chris Ramel has his in the back room."
That guy, man.
He's funny.
Wait, do you have any questions that you want to
Yeah,
ask?
please, Ariana. This is
Ariana, please.
Please.
Be honored.
Sit down right here. Talk right into the
Justin said he was starstruck the last time he met you.
Yeah.
Never.
I remember so real quick little story. She came once with Chris Ramel, and it was after some wine event, correct?
Yeah.
And they came into
It was
BLA.
after we went to Vino, actually. Small
Yeah,
world.
they came into BLA. Chris texted me. The only space we had was in our little private room we have, and it sits up to 6. And like, I walked in to say what's up, and I knew everyone in the room except for her. And I was like, wow. So I was immediately like, and she was the only female in the room.
Yeah.
Right.
That's usually.
And
how
I
it
was
goes.
like, and Chris is like, he introduced her, and I was like, so I follow her Instagram and like kind of learned her backstory. Started listening to the podcast, so I am a fan of you. She got married yesterday too, or the day
Thank
before
you.
yesterday. Congratulations.
I kind of want to say something to that actually before we go back to the wine. We were talking about Hawaii and hospitality and all these things, and it's actually funny that you guys brought up Micah Suderman, because before his name was ever dropped, I was thinking about something that Micah always tells me. I work with Micah, as everyone knows. He's my boss man. He always says Hawaii's main export, it's not pineapples, it's happy memories. And it's about
aloha.
It's
Yeah.
aloha. It's about hospitality. And something I was thinking about this whole time you guys were talking was, I wasn't sitting at the bar, like those token, beautiful, iconic bar seats at Bar Leather Apron, but I still felt so enamored with everyone's hospitality at Bar Leather Apron, from the team to the menu to the knowledge to just like the aloha I felt in the room. We didn't have reservations and, we weren't sitting right at the bar, but I just felt so special. And that's something that I was like, oh, this is what you think about when you think about hospitality and making memories. So I just really wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
It was so funny because I was thinking it the whole time and you guys dropped Micah's name and I was like, oh, so perfect, so perfect. But what's also really funny too is that, well, first of all, do you guys like the wines? Because they're scrumptious, right?
I like this one more than this one, I think.
The Fari,
Yeah.
The Fari, I know me and Cully were talking about it earlier. It has like the savoriness.
Yes.
Yeah.
You keep going back to
Yeah.
it. I keep pouring
Is
myself a little
umami
more.
a thing in wine?
Umami is the thing, and I feel like umami gives you this fifth sense of also kind of that I want to keep going back because it pairs with the food. It's like this mouth-watering, let's go back to it kind of thing.
Yep.
But also, it's so funny when you were talking about hospitality too, Justin, you were saying heart, technique, and atmosphere. And both of these wines come from 2 different places in the world, made by 2 very, very different gentlemen. Fari is, how I described it to Cully, was the Brad Pitt of wine. He's a mountain man. And Fred Scher is like this amazing, sweet, just this eclectic gentleman, kind of like almost a hippie at heart, also a nature man, but they're very different people. But when you're talking about like heart, technique, and atmosphere, both of these wines have that to me. So and they're very, very different. Atmosphere, they're coming from France. They have that savoriness that you are talking about. And for me, Cher's grapes, they are a little bit riper. You know, they are coming from Sonoma and the Russian River Valley, but they still have this essence of pairing with food. You know, it's not going to overpower the food at all. And I think that's really special. That's just coming from both of their very special vineyards. Technique, they have very different styles, but they're still very, very scrumptious. And then heart, you know, Cher, what he told me and Micah and Chuck when we went to Wine Speak was he will never say a wine is complete until him and his wife are fighting over the bottle at the end of dinner. So if he's not fighting over it, he's going to go back to the drawing board and make it perfect. And then Fari, his heart is he wants to make his father proud, and that's where he inherited the winery from. So just when you were talking about heart, technique, atmosphere, I was like, that applies to everything, man. That's where awesome. It comes down to. So thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, of course.
I think this podcast is special for multiple reasons. For one, I know a lot of the people that are part of it, and I like watching them and seeing my friends and hearing them talk story. But for two, me directly, like I don't have a lot of experience with wine. I love tasting everything, you know, everything, cocktails, whiskey, spirits, whatever. And I like tasting wine, and I see this as a very approachable way of tasting wine, because it can often be very, and the world of whiskey, the world of spirits is exactly the same thing. It can be almost like daunting, like almost scary to get into, you know. But when you hear like a master's approach like Chuck, and then you hear like a very passionate up and comer like yourself in the world of wine. And you hear like something like Kale and myself, Kale has his own wine of the week feature. No, but like myself, who don't drink wine very often, like it's every level.
Yes.
But all
we can all enjoy it.
Yeah,
at the
for
end
sure.
Of the day.
But very easy to like to grab a hold of.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when we were first putting this thing together, I had no interest in being on this thing. And then I was like, okay, I've got to assume the role of asking the layman's questions. And it's been really fun. Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
And you probably dealt with that for a good portion of your life, you know?
Yeah.
Like I remember when I first saw you at Manifest, like you were I knew who you were. You were Jason's brother, what do you say, brother-in-law?
Stepbrother,
yeah. So I looked over you like as that, you know, not even knowing you or ever talking to you. But I was like, dude, that guy probably knows so much about wine. You know what I mean? But like, you came up with like, okay, chilled kettle, pine back. That guy probably doesn't know anything about wine.
And that was his fifth one in, right? Yeah. Well, let me bring Chuck back. No, just close it out, because we all want to hear your comments. Okay.
Thank you for joining us this week, Justin.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Chuck, come in.
And to all of you.
Yes.
Close it out. Thank you for joining us this week, you guys. It's been this was like so much fun to me, and I think that there's a lot of tons of knowledge being dropped and shared in this episode, and it was really special. So thank you for tuning in this week, and we'll bring something new every week, and
it's awesome.
We're always trying to build it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me get one cheers in.
Cheers.
Though.
One cheers. Chuck, do you want to borrow a glass?
Nope.
Okay. Cheers, you guys.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Mahalo.